Membranophones of Polynesia, From Modern Times to Ancient Origins, by David Ostwald, for Hawaiian Studies 175 at the University of Hawai'i in Hilo. Welcome! This traditional Oli indigenous chant comes to us from Mangareva. Mangareva is the central and largest island of the Gambler Islands in French Polynesia. Take a moment to absorb this Oli. These sacred, poetic words remind us how drums played a crucial role in the everyday life of the Polynesian people. Each day as the sun arose, the drums would announce the rising light. From the furthest reaches of the sea to the shores of Southeast Asia, there are drums. Drums create the sounds of life, of human settlers who voyaged from island to island among the deep and vast waters of the great Pacific Ocean. Some of these drums were made of the simplest materials like wood. These are the idiophones. Others were carefully crafted of both wood and stretched membranes. These are the membranophones and the focus of this report. In our journey, we shall explore the modern and ancient membranophones of Polynesia and their origins. We will look at how indigenous Polynesian drums were made and why they were so important to these settlers who voyaged across the Pacific. By the end of our travels, we may discover some surprising ilations in regards to the ancient origins of Polynesian membranophones. What is a membranophone? Before we dive into the subject of Polynesian membranophones, let's define what is a membranophone. A membranophone is a musical drum which uses a stretched membrane to produce resonant sound. Our very own ears also use a membrane called the tympanum, or tympanic membrane, to transmit sound to our auditory nerves. In layman terms, we call the musical drum membrane a batter or drum head. The advantages of using a drum head are many. It's relatively easy to replace after prolonged use. It's pliable and vibrates much more than a solid material. And it's easy to tune up or down in pitch. The shell or body of the drum is its main component. This solid, usually cylindrical body can be made from wood or metal or plastic or any combination thereof. The quality of a membranophone drum's sound depends upon both the type of drum head and the body of the drum. The head shape can be round, which is most common, square, or other. As for the head material, the type and elasticity of its skin, fabric, plastic, or other will affect the sound, also whether it is thin or thick. The body shape and dimensions can be round or square, shallow or deep, straight, tubular, or irregular. And the body material can be of a type and density of wood, metal, plastic, or other. Together, all these factors contribute to the quality of sound produced by a membranophone. For simplicity's sake, during the course of this presentation, we'll refer to the membranophone sometimes as a membrane drum or simply drum. In our contemporary world, native Polynesians use many modern musical instruments. This includes modern membranophones, such as those found in modern-day drum kits. Most people today are familiar with the sound of the bass drum, the snare drum, tom-toms, and floor toms. These membrane drums originate from the Western culture that colonized much of Polynesia since the 1700s. On the other side of the coin, at the right, you see taiko drums. Some modern Polynesians also play imported taiko drums. These originate from Japan and their use is far less common than that of Western-style drum kits. And while drum kits usually perform more of a secular entertainment function, with the exception perhaps of those used for church events, taiko drums perform at a slightly more sacred level. However, neither of these modern membranophones serve in the same religious way as how some of the original Polynesian membranophones did. Groups that still use traditional membranophones differ throughout Polynesia. Some regions, such as the Cook and the Society Islands, continue to use traditional drums such as the pahu in their drum ensembles. In Hawaii, we witness pahu drumming at luau's and other traditional cultural events. Yet, in the totality of Polynesia today, by far the most popular songs come from bands that use westernized drum kits, whether these be live or recorded. Beyond this, the electronic revolution has gone even further away from ancient Polynesian membranophone drumming, but that's a story for a different report. Also not the main subject of this presentation are the idiophone drums. Although they do clue us in as to the origin of membranophones in Polynesia, ornately carved wooden idiophones differ from membranophones. Idiophones, or slit drums, are a more primitive form of drum. Idiophone drums are simpler and easier to create than membranophone drums. They also endure ocean travel better than membranophones. Just about anything can potentially serve as an idiophone, even a canoe. Just look at the cajon. To create slit drums, Polynesians hollow out the trunks of hardwood trees. They then add a slit for the drum sound to emanate outwards. With wooden sticks, drummers strike these instruments along different regions of their wooden length. This produces a variety of tones, much like how Tahitians play the to ere today. Unfortunately, this striking with wooden sticks eventually wears out the body of the idiophone drums. Membranophone drums offer the advantage of a replaceable drum head. Thus, the wooden body of the membranophone drum can last longer than an idiophone. Also, drummers can simply use their palms, hands, and fingers to produce a variety of dynamic and rich sounds from membranophone drums, without the need for drumsticks. Let's look now at the origins of membranophone drums. Drums in general originated in ancient times amongst the earliest human communities living in Africa. Subsequently, some of the first evidence for membrane drums comes from ancient China, as far back as the Neolithic period, circa 5500 BC. These ancient drums were made from hollowed-out logs and then covered with alligator skin. Around the same time, in the Americas, similar drums also existed. And in ancient Egypt, around the time of the Old Kingdom, circa 2600 BC, there existed both single membrane drums and barrel-shaped double membrane drums, with which the ancient Egyptian soldiers used to communicate information on the battlefield. This tradition has passed down even to Hawaii, where ancient warriors also communicated via drums in battle. Ancient drums served multiple purposes. Besides their obvious musical value, these ancient membranophones infused rituals with spiritual energy and facilitated communion with the divine. For shamans, the circular shape of a drum represents the sun and the cosmos. When a drummer strikes the drum with hands, sticks, or other implements, this creates a vibration. The sound produced then travels into the surrounding world. In so doing, it triggers other vibrations. The drum essentially causes a chain reaction of repercussions that extend throughout the cosmos. Drums also help to create bonds of tribal solidarity and acceptance for members at communal gatherings. What's more, drums serve as tools for communication between diverse communities. Drums transcend linguistic barriers and express a rhythmic, universal language. Thus, they connect us to our ancestors and to each other. And when voyagers set out towards the islands of the Pacific, drum rhythms help to coordinate canoe paddlers. Onwards to the islands! Out of Africa, humans migrated to other parts of the world. They carried their culture and whatever musical instruments they could transport. These people also brought the knowledge of how to create new instruments. They arrived to new lands where different plants grew, different animals roamed, and so the different materials they used for their new drums created novel forms and variations in sound. Once humanity traversed new continents, such as Asia, it also spread into the great oceans. So it was with the Polynesian race that issued forth from the shores of Eastern Asia. More than 2,000 years ago, long before Europeans sailed the open seas of the Atlantic, seafarers from Southeast Asia began voyaging across our vast Pacific Ocean. These people of the water were master navigators upon the vast seas of the Pacific. They followed the stars and reached isolated islands. These proto-Polynesians developed new adaptations for their musical instruments. Now they made their drums from the trunks of koa, coconut, or ulu trees. They used shark skin membranes, more resistant to salt water than continental animal hides. And they continued their journey further into the unknown, watery expanse of Kekai, until finally they reached Hawaii. On this next screen, I have provided a summary based on our class lectures. This chart summarizes what we learned about Polynesian membranophones in class. Note how most of them exist in central and eastern Polynesia. By contrast, in western Polynesia, the first area colonized by settlers from Southeast Asia, most of the drums are idiophone slit drums. Idiophone slit drums are the most basic drums to make. They're great for travel across the ocean to help the paddlers keep rhythm, and you don't need to skin a shark to make them. Yet the use of idiophone drums apparently fell out of use for places like Hawaii, New Zealand, and Rapa Nui. At the three vertices of the Polynesian triangle, membranophone drums displaced the more primitive idiophones. Let's now look more closely at some specific examples of Polynesian membranophones. Here we see the pahu upa upa, a dance drum from Tahiti played by hand. Senet cordage lashes a shark skin drumhead to the pahu upa upa's wooden base. Why shark skin, you may ask? Sharks come from the ocean. Their skin is not only tough and durable, it resists water. This makes it a far superior drum membrane compared with the hide of land animals, for drums carried on canoes or even those played near beaches in the salty, humid air that surrounds Pacific islands. According to Polynesian legend, sharkskin pahu drums first appeared in Hawaii 700 or 800 years ago. La'a Mai Kahiki, a chief's son, brought this tradition from Tahiti. Although sharkskin drums were already in use all over eastern Polynesia, the oral history tells us French Polynesia is the source for both Hawaii's earliest pahu drums and its accompanying hula dance form and codified movements. Take note of this interesting fact. We shall see later how another staple of Polynesian culture, the sweet potato, also came indirectly from central Polynesia. In the Austral Islands of French Polynesia, traditional membranophones such as this one would accompany songs, dances, and rituals at sacred marae sites. Only about a dozen of these beautiful Austral Islands drums survive today. They were well regarded as some of the best pahu throughout Polynesia prior to Western colonization. The body of this Austral Island pahu consists of a tall, thin-walled hardwood cylinder set upon an ornately carved base. Its drum membrane is of shark skin, secured by cordage to rectangular tuning lugs located between the body and the base of the drum. The ornately carved base shows figures of ancestral women and/or dancers. The openings here allow the drum sound to emanate outwards. This Hawaiian pahu from the Hartenberger World Musical Instrument Collection consists of a body made from the hollowed-out log of koa wood and drumhead of shark skin. Braided olona and coconut fiber cordage secures the membrane to its body. Kumu hula teachers, and ho'opa'a, hula chanters, play the Hawaiian pahu by lightly striking the drumhead with their fingers and the palms of their hands. The pahu produces deep tones to complement the higher-pitched puniu drum, which we shall see later. Here we see another example of the Hawaiian pahu. Originally, the pahu was used in the hula pahu, which was called a kapu, or sacred dance, reserved for high-ranking figures such as chiefs or gods. The larger drum, called pahu heiau, or temple drum, was used exclusively in the Hawaiian pre-Christian places of worship called heiau. It was only after the kapu system was abolished in 1819 that the hula masters adopted it into a smaller drum they called pahu hula and used it more casually in hula. Now we see the puniu, or knee drum, of Hawaii. This first picture on the left shows a puniu with its ka, or coconut senet cord, attached. At the Bishop Museum in Honolulu, this puniu sits out on a table for visitors to sample playing. Traditionally, an olapa would beat the puniu with the ka to keep rhythm. The puniu membrane is made of the skin of a kala, the unicorn reef fish. Its body is a coconut or niu shell, pu, thus pu-niu. The pu-niu is strapped to the thigh above the knee. Thus it acquired its English name of knee drum. On the right is a second example of a beautiful pu-niu found behind glass case, again at the Bishop Museum. Another name for the puniu is kilu. However, this name is less commonly used since it also refers to the kilu sexual game of tossing a coconut shell quoit. Ove te pepe, ove te pepe, ove te pepe. The voice of the big drum was calling at the new feast place, its beats slow and level as an old man's tongue. Intricate senet lashing distinguishes this large pahu drum from the Marquesas Islands. It is hollowed out at both ends with bullock hide stretched over one end to replace worn-out shark skin. With the exception of the hide, this drum is very ancient. Drums such as this one were played by hand in groups on the tohua, a paved dance area that also served as a ceremonial gathering place in Marquesan communities. Look at the resemblance between pahu of the Marquesas Islands and the large drum in the blue mural on the right from Bonampak, Yucatan. Membrane drums have obviously existed for a long time in many different cultures of our world. For ancient Mayans in Central America, formal battle opened with the dreadful din of drums, whistles, shelled trumpets, and war cries. How does this compare with the vigorous Tahitian ura pau dance, where drums beat to the accompaniment of shouting? Long before Europeans arrived to the Pacific in the 16th century, the sweet potato, uala, a native plant from South America, entered Polynesia, probably via what are now called the Marquesas Islands in French Polynesia. From there, this very important food source spread throughout the Pacific and into Asia. This groundbreaking change had resulted from Polynesia's contact with a tribe of people, the Zenu, from what is now called Colombia in South America, 1,000 years ago. However, modern-day experts have only recently, since about 2020, documented this knowledge. Such a fabulous discovery opens all kinds of possibilities regarding the history of Polynesia and Oceania in general. Does it hint of a tremendous pre-European Pacific socio-economic and cultural network? One that may have spanned from the western shores of the American continent all the way through Polynesia and into the eastern shores of the Asian continent itself? One which existed since a time long before Vasco Núñez de Balboa first sighted the Pacific in 1513, or Ferdinand Magellan sailed the Pacific in 1520, or any European colonizers explored these regions from the 16th century onwards? How could this be? Was it facilitated by the Pacific Islanders' formidable ability to voyage between the many islands that dot our vast Pacific Ocean? Concurrently with the introduction of the sweet potato from South America into the Marquesas Islands, some of the Native American culture likely came with it. Did this bring some forms of membranophones to Polynesia? Who living today could tell us the story? Yet, we do have the legends that say the sharkskin pahu drum of Hawaii came from the Marquesas' neighbors in Tahiti. And what we do know for sure is that membranophones have existed in human culture since the earliest times. These powerful instruments have traveled and spread worldwide in multiple directions many times. Over the great waters of the Pacific Ocean, Polynesians and other seafarers carried with them their membranophone drums. And so, the pounding rhythms we hear today throughout Polynesia and the world signal the continued vitality of this ancient, sacred, human tradition.